It's October 6th. Ukraine Media Center Greenform continues its operation. My name is Svetlana Chaparenko, and now we will be talking about the results of the sale of state and communal lands. We will be talking about the 2 years of operation of online land auctions. Well, in July 21, the land reform has started, and in October 21, the sale of land through Prozorro.Sales online auctions started too, which allowed selling the land under the joint rules. So now we will be talking about transformation of the land market in war conditions and what are the communities that sell their lands the most efficiently in electronic auctions. Joining us here are Serhiy But, CEO of Prozorro.Sales, Denis Bashlik, Deputy Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine for Digital Development, Dmitro Makarenko, the head of the State Cadastre of Ukraine, Roman Nater, researcher at the Center for Food and Land Use Research of the Kiev School of Economics, Anastasia Ivansova, Director of Communications at Vox Ukraine. And joining us online will be Nadia Kryzhan, Chief Specialist of the Land Issues Department of the Novoborissivka Village Council. So let's start with you, Mr. Serhiy. Before the start of the land reform, there were fears that the oligarchs and foreign entities would buy all the land. So did those fears come true? Well, really, this myth existed. Now it's year 2 of the full-scale operation of the land market, and we see that that fact that somebody buys something out, it didn't come true. I would like to emphasize that we're saying that it's in circulation. The land is in circulation, not in sale. It's the real estate which is staying in Ukraine, no matter who's the owner. Given the restrictions on the land market, we see that those restrictions apply only for physical entities. So now we may sell up to 100 hectares per one individual, and this type of restrictions, it worked. Now we see that in the regions where there is no active battles, we see the approach to the land market is transforming, the price is transforming, and we see the price growing. And today, in this context, we would like to segregate 3 regions. First, Ivano-Frankivsk region, where the median price is around $2,000 per hectare. The price started from 1,000 per hectare, and Lviv region with Ternopil region. So these 3 regions, in Ternopil region it's 1,400 per hectare, in Lviv region it's $1,450, which demonstrates that even given the restrictions, there is demand, the supply is growing accordingly, and the price is not sitting where it used to be. And that myth that existed before the implementation of the land reform, none of those fears came true. When in January there will be another phase taking effect of the year 24. So what are the changes that we expect to see? Well, starting from the January 24, there will be permission to sell the land to the legal entities whose beneficiaries are Ukrainians. There will be a new pool of those who expect to get access to the land market. The legal entities will want to develop long-term investment projects there that will result in growth of price, because we understand when there is a demand, there is a supply, and obviously there is deficit. And if we check the situation now, people approach the disposal of their land very carefully. They understand that it's the real estate that may produce certain profit for them. And when there is no monopoly, the price is growing in every specific region. So expecting the price to grow, you know, expecting, I apologize for the slang. This year we have to register a draft law that will facilitate a lot of procedures to make the market more liberal, but it will not apply to fundamental changes that exist today regarding the limitation of number of hectares per one individual. Those are excessively the procedures that will facilitate the disposal or re-registration of land or other different aspects which are related to changes of characteristics of the land lots. Thank you very much, Mr. Sergey. Next question to you. The land has become a commodity, so what is the demand for this commodity? What is the dynamic of this demand that you observe? How did it change within the period of the full-scale invasion? Thank you. I would like to ask you to switch the slides. Really, an integral part of a global land reform in our country is the electronic auction for Prozorro.Sales. All the land trades, whether it's procurement or sale, they are based in the electronic auctions, and this tool is one of the fundamental safeties against manipulations, against manual management or corruption based aspects which are inherent in such, maybe inherent in such type of trades. This is why implementation of electronic trade along with the permission of lease of agricultural lands for private owners was something that allowed us in the end of year 21 to provide an impetus to this market. And as you fairly mentioned, we may state that starting from October 21 the land has become a commodity, and it's a very powerful step on our way to market economy. It's an intense step to make the local governments have more tools in their hands to dispose of those resources that are available to them. And talking about the martial law, I would like to mention that even during the war, the market demonstrates quite a positive dynamics, and the demand for such auctions is growing. We observe at least 3 participants per one auction, which is high demand, and again it results in money coming to the local level. It helps local governments to implement some infrastructure and security projects, humanitarian things of a kind. And this is where we can state that this market keeps working for 2 years, and we're preparing to the following stages that were mentioned. And but talking about what we have today, within these 2 years we were able to sell and lease land lots in amount equal to 1.7 billion hryvnias on local and central level. We held more than 6.4 auctions, which included more than 10,000 participants, which demonstrates that there is a demand for this type of product, as you call it. The dynamic is quite interesting because we don't have a 12-month base, so we could calculate it year to year, because the reform has started in the end of year 21, year 22 due to certain circumstances is not quite illustrative by a number of business parameters. Now that we're almost through the year 23, we would be able to make a summary of one relatively full business cycle. So we observe the growth of quality and quantity indicators, and talking about the quality, almost 38,000 hectares were sold through or leased through electronic auctions, and the vast majority are the assets of the local governments, local communities. Again, it allows the local governments to raise funds, raise resources, and it's mostly the lease, because the lease is more of a simple kind of tool. This is why the dynamics is like this. Just a little bit of dry statistics about the rating of the regions. We have champions in number of indicators, specifically talking about the absolute profit. It's Poltava, Odessa, and Kirovograd regions. By area, the leaders are Odessa, Poltava, and Zhytomyr regions. Well, talking about the price of hectare, I don't want to stop here, because now we all understand that the martial law and the military and economic crisis, they impacted the land market, both lease and sale. But on the other hand, what we observe is that the market continues operating. Within year 23, the activity is growing on the market, and we put a lot of expectations on further reforms of this area in our country. Thank you very much. Mr. Dmitro, what about the agricultural holdings? How do they feel under current conditions? Is it easier for them to accumulate the land, or is it now more complicated? Thank you for this question. In fact, the main goal of opening the land market and of land reform was to give the citizens the opportunity to fully dispose of their property, and to fight those myths and threats that we mentioned today. We set the safeties to make sure that we avoid such facts when the agricultural holdings buy that land at price close to zero. It worked, in my opinion, and given the results demonstrated by the market for the time being and studying the dynamic, the situation is really quite predictable. It was said that we cannot fully evaluate it, because within the first year the market operated only half a year. Then there was year 22, when, due to the facts that everybody is aware of, we couldn't make a proper evaluation. And now that we're almost through the third year, the preconditions for its operations, for the operation of the market, have stabilized. But given the figures, what I would like to say, within the year 21, more than 100,000 hectares were sold, or not sold, but leased. Within the war year 22, the market fell, obviously. Only 69,000 hectares were leased. And within year 23, we see that as of October, when the most part of the year has passed, we see the indicators getting closer to the pre-war indicators, when there was a postponed demand. So now it's about 60,000 hectares already leased, and or sold. So it's close to 100,000 hectares that existed before the war. As my colleague said, the redistribution of prices is not equal across Ukraine, but we may talk about it later. Well, we can talk about the prices now. How have the prices changed within these 2 years, and what influenced these dynamics? Well, in compliance with the civil and land legislation, the price is regulated by the agreement, but to avoid dumping, we've set the minimal prices, specifically the amount of normative estimate. And normative estimate means the quality of soil. It's inconsistent across Ukraine, but as it was said before, there are champions, the western regions, Lviv region, Ivano-Frankivsk region, where price per hectare was above 70,000 hryvnias. It's top. And talking about the average in Ukraine, it vacillates between 33 to 37,000 hryvnias, and obviously we have to keep in mind the phenomena of demand and supply, and demand and supply are directly influenced by the economic and political situation. So talking about the southern regions like Kherson and Zaporizhia region, it's clear that the price is falling there because a lot of land lots are mined, are contaminated, they are constantly shelled, the security situation is difficult, which results in fall of price. So I think that after stabilization, after the victory, we could more objectively evaluate it from the prices angle. Mr. Rahman, it sounds almost perfect. The land market works, the prices are growing, the market is transparent, but according to your observations, what are still the gaps or maybe some challenges in the land market that you would like to draw our attention to? Well, the challenge is the high transaction exchanges during entering into sale or lease agreements. So those transactional expenses amount to sometimes 15,000 hryvnias, sometimes even more. And talking about the smaller lots, like half a hectare, at the price of hectares, say about 40,000. If the price is 20,000 per half a hectare, given 15,000 hryvnias per transaction, or spending 15,000 hryvnia per transaction is a little bit too much. It's related to a number of inspections, of checks that notary has to do during registration of the agreement, and it's the matter of low competition of notaries in the rural areas. It's a serious challenge for the land market, and any attempts to reduce those transaction expenses, they may improve the situation, specifically in the western regions where the average size of land lot is smaller. Because one of the hypotheses why we see such prices in the western regions, because the land lots are smaller there. If we see the average size in the east at 4 hectares, in the western regions it's 1 hectare. So those lands that are the most valuable, they just don't end up in our statistics, and this is why we see such a difference of price in hectare, because such agreements are not being entered into due to the high level of the transaction exchanges. You observe both online and offline transactions. So in your opinion, which way is more efficient? Well, we within the project of Resilience Land supported by USAID, we observe and monitor dynamics, and we can compare it with what's going on in the market. There are 3 ways of how we can look at what's going on with the prices during the Prozorro.Sales auctions. First, it's the change of price during the auction. The average price to of sale of communal land is say 2,139 hryvnia per hectare, and the average growth is 2.7 times. It demonstrates that there is competition in the auctions. There is the real competition between the participants, and we see the prices growing. Another metrics, we see that the sale of lease rights through auction results in higher prices than the alternatives. Is the comparison of the lease price under agreement that are entered in the physical market, like an agreement between an individual and a legal entity. So it's different from those prices that we see in Prozorro.Sales. If we take, for example, August, the average price at Prozorro.Sales was 8.4 hryvnias per hectare. At that very August, there were around 50 agreements entered into for 50,000 hectares, and the price under those agreements were 1.3 per hectare. So we see 2.7 times growth of price at Prozorro.Sales comparing to another market that is outside Prozorro.Sales. And another metrics is the efficiency of comparison of what used to be before their offline online auctions. And with our colleagues from World Bank, we were making a research, and we've seen the prices growing given all other factors up to 75%, and economically and statistically significant figure. If we lease the communal land starting from 2015 using Prozorro.Sales, the budget of the communities would have additional 64 million hryvnias per year. Thank you very much. One of the important results of the land reform was the fact that the communities are able currently to manage their lands. I would like to ask our technical team to put Ms. Nadia on the screen. Ms. Nadia is the Chief Specialist of the Land Issues Department of the Novoborissivka Village Council. Novoborissivka is one of the leading communities in terms of sale and lease. So, Ms. Nadia, do you really see the new opportunities that are provided with Prozorro.Sales, and what are your personal profits, or like, I mean, not your personal, but what are the profits of your community? Good afternoon, everybody. I work for less than 1 year as a chief specialist in my community. I'm replacing my colleague who took up the arms to defend our homelands, and so we work with Prozorro.Sales starting from the beginning of the reform, and we've made 3 million hryvnias. And the number of successful auctions is 89. Is the lease of agricultural lands. 14 more auctions are on the phase of entering into agreements. In case of their successful end, our budget will be replenished for another 1 million hryvnias. So the competition is between usually 3 participants, and in April this year there were 3 lots, and the auction included 4 participants with a starting price of 17,000 hryvnias. The price per auction were growing twice or more than twice. And again, during the last auction, this is exactly the story that happened. I would like to say that Prozorro.Sales is something that allows us solving the problem of robust competition, and it allowed us saving time, which is never enough. And I'm not even saying about the high quality customer support that allows us to enter into agreements to trade the land online, and the operators of the electronic platform, the service that we work on, Prozorro.Sales, they always help us in case we have any questions. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Ms. Nadia, for sharing your experience. Ms. Anastasia, we mentioned the myth that existed before the implementation of the land market. Vox Ukraine is somebody who studies the myth. So what were the myths that you were seeing during these 2 years, and how they evolved during these 2 years of operation of the land market, and how does Russia mythologize this fear if they do it? Well, hello, let me give you a little bit of context. When there was a ban of sale of agricultural lands, the main audience were for whom the myth was targeted was the owners of the land lots, because it all started with restriction of the sale of the personal land lots. And back in the year 2017, when the talks were activated about the land reform, we had about 6.9 million of owners of land plots, and those people and their families, they were the target audience to be told about how bad it is if they will be able to sell their land. Also, there was a number of fakes related to those facts that your land will be bought at nothing. So there were no talks that people may not agree at low price. Then there were talks about everything to be happening in transparent way. But with the beginning of the full-scale war, Russia really added to those efforts, and now we see some narratives from them about the online lease happening only for the purposes of settlements for arms and international support provided to Ukraine. So the land, so they say the land is lot only to make money for to wage the war. Also, another narrative frequently published by Russia in a number of Telegram channels, which information is picked up by some minor media, is that now the land is bought by the foreigners in Ukraine, which is not true, as it was said, because the foreigners are not allowed to buy land in Ukraine for the time being, which then produced another fake that those foreigners who already bought land in Ukraine force local population to work on demined lands, and people get blown up because the foreign owners, as they call them in the Telegram channels, they force the Ukrainians to work on that land. But again, talking about the fakes about the land market, they did not only exist as a self-contained fakes, but as an addition to other fakes. For example, back in 2018, there was a discussion of a concession law, and the land market was also always present in those discussions. So like now the law on concession will be adopted, and your land lots will be taken away from you to build a factory or a road there. And this is something that was present in the information field because we had a huge audience to be influenced. And so the last thing I would like to comment on that conditionally before the year 2021, the opinion of Ukrainians regarding the land market was not crystallized, so to say, and the responses of Ukrainians in sociological survey were very different depending on the way you put the question. Like if you ask if you want the free circulation of the land, a lot of Ukrainians were saying no. Many Ukrainians were saying we don't want the land market to exist. If Ukrainians are asked, do you want to have a right to freely manage your own land, the vast majority of Ukrainians, they were saying, of course we want to do it because it's our land and we do whatever we want to that land. So as a result of such surveys that had no further explanation. It was laid as a fundamental for some fakes that was used by pro-Russian politicians before the war, and the fakes that are used by Russia now in these conditions. Thank you, dear colleagues. Do we have any questions to our speakers? Vladislav Obuch, Ukrinform. About 1 week ago, I was in Chernihiv region and I was talking to 3 farmers whose farms were almost completely destroyed by Russians. So the 3 problems that they name are the necessity for funding under conditions of absence of collateral, and another question is that the community increased the price of lease for them almost twice. So does the Ministry of Agriculture thinks about solving this problem for the regions which are close to the front lines? We understand that it's good from the point of view of replenishing the budgets, but from the point of view of local farmers, they will lose competition to non-local farmers or to agricultural holdings who were not affected by war. Thank you for your question. First, talking about the support of the small farmers by the government. For the time being, there is no single state program to support medium or large size businesses. All the resources are allocated to support the small farmers, and the accent is put on deoccupied territories that were mostly affected by the full-scale invasion. Last year the program was launched, the grant program per cow or per hectare. It was up to 120 hectares, or for those farmers who have more than or under 100 cows. All the support that exists now is aimed at the deoccupied territories, and it covers only small farmers. So it's an ambiguous thing. Support only the small farmers. We understand it's the consumer prices, is the internal security. There can be no compromise here. Talking about the auctions and the prices set by the local governments, it's difficult to answer here because as a central executive body we don't have a right to interfere operation of the local governments, but again they are elected by you and now they set the rules of the game for you. Is the internal policy of the regional communities. So yes, there is the basic price from which the auction starts, but the territorial communities, they have mechanisms to increase the basic price. That's true. So again, is the matter of communication with those whom the denizens of that village voted in. And if is the compensation by the government, compensation of the difference of price between the pre-war price and the existing, not maybe for all of the lands that are rented by the farmers, but for all other lands. Well, first of all, we don't have agricultural lands in possession of the state, something that can be used in circulation. There are certain legal nuances for adoption of the new law. How fair would it be to compensate the expenses of the local budgets from the central budget? Well, we have to think about it. The balance of budget is an ambiguous thing, because if we talk about compensation for acquisition of agricultural machinery or transfer of those funds to military needs, I think that there can be no disputes about that. What government can support, they do support, for example, the exemptions for the lands that were affected by bombardments. All those things, they exist. The government has already implemented the exemption taxation mechanism. Next year we plan to support the clearance of lands that was already mentioned by Yulia Sviridenko, Vice Prime Minister. Also, there are programs of grant support for the next year. It's all planned, but within the budget that exists for the time being. Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions to our guests from the floor? Well, if not, then I would like to thank you. I'm reminding you we were talking about the results of the sale of state and communal lands, and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform will continue its operation at 1300. We will be talking with Andrei Demchenko, spokesperson of the State Bodyguard Service of Ukraine, about the current situation at the borders and checkpoints. Stay tuned.